One of the most powerful private estates in Britain just landed in Prince William's hands, and it has sent shockwaves straight through Camilla's world. For years, she moved through that estate like it was personally hers, acting like the rules didn't apply to her at all. She even placed her sister on the payroll and opened doors for her family whenever she wanted, while no one dared to challenge it. Then William stepped in after taking full control and made a move that left the entire palace stunned beyond belief. He ordered every single one of Camilla's family members removed, and they were escorted out without hesitation. Now Camilla's family is furious, demanding access again and pushing hard behind the scenes to get back in. It has escalated so far that threats are now being directed at Camilla herself to force a reversal of the decision. Cornered and under pressure, Camilla rushed straight to Charles and begged him to overturn William's decision immediately. What Charles did next shocked everyone in the room, and nobody saw it coming at all. In a decisive move, Charles chose his son over his wife, shifting the balance of power inside the palace instantly. On April 26, 2026, King Charles III walked into Buckingham Palace, sat at his desk, and signed a document that shook Camilla's world to its core. The document was the Transfer of Sovereignty Act Phase 1, handing Prince William full ownership of the Duchy of Cornwall. It covers 135,000 acres across England and Wales, from Dartmoor to the Scilly Isles, packed with commercial sites, homes, and farmland that has built royal wealth since the 1300s. In 2026, the duchy alone was generating over £1.2 billion a year, and every penny of it now belonged to William. But what made this more than just money was the way Camilla discovered it all. The Queen Consort of England, after 30 years at the heart of the monarchy, wasn't even in the room when her husband signed it away. No consultation, no warning, just a palace aide arriving at Clarence's house with a written summary of what had already been decided. It was the kind of cold, formal notice usually sent to departments with barely any contact, not to the second most powerful woman in the royal household. And inside the palace, everyone understood exactly what that decision signaled. Original word count, 293 words, rewritten word count, 322 words. This was a message, and Camilla received it with devastating clarity. People close to her said that after the aide left, Clarence's house felt like the air had been ripped straight out of it. Word spread through the corridors, like something had gone seriously wrong. Camilla went completely silent for 3 full hours. No calls, no appearances, not even a single response to the aide who delivered it. She withdrew into herself, and even the staff were too uneasy to break the silence. So what exactly was inside that document that hit so hard? Nobody could quite believe how quickly everything shifted behind closed doors. The answer goes back years to a red leather envelope Queen Elizabeth II quietly sealed in late 2021 as her health was fading. Elizabeth didn't leave it as sentiment. She left it as a warning weapon. Inside was a set of legal instructions senior courtiers called the Heritage Lock Codicil, a constitutional time bomb built to activate under very specific conditions. Insiders later described it as something never meant to be touched lightly. It was sealed with intent, not emotion. The trigger in 2026 was Charles's declining health, pushing urgency to secure William as fully empowered heir before things escalated into a constitutional crisis. Hidden inside that structure was a clause known as the anticipatory obstruction mechanism, and this is what has Camilla's side absolutely furious. This wasn't just paperwork, it was power being locked in place for good. Every move after it pointed back to that clause. In simple terms, the clause built a permanent legal wall around the Duchess's most important heritage estates, blocking any non-blood relative of the Windsor family from commercially developing, leasing, or gaining institutional control. Elizabeth never wrote Camilla's name anywhere in it. She didn't need to. Every reader understood exactly who it was designed to stop. And insiders say the intent behind it left no room for interpretation at all. Now, you might be asking why Elizabeth would go to such extreme legal lengths to lock down William's inheritance like that. The answer sits in something almost nobody inside the palace ever spoke about out loud: Elizabeth carried a quiet but deep concern about Camilla's place inside the royal structure, something she never said publicly, but clearly factored into her private decisions. She had lived through the chaos of the 1980s and 1990s, watching the affair tear the family apart and seeing Diana break down under pressure in real time. Over the years, she made a firm internal call. She couldn't stop Charles from marrying Camilla, but she could absolutely lock the financial and territorial core of William's future so tightly that no outsider linked to Camilla could ever break in. That decision became one of the final protective moves she made for her grandson, fully aware she would never see how it played out. What makes this even more intense is that Camilla wasn't completely blind to what was coming. In the months before Elizabeth passed, rumors started slipping through palace channels that constitutional lawyers were quietly drafting sealed legal instructions tied to the duchy. Camilla pushed hard for answers and sent an intermediary to get clarity, but what came back was a cold refusal with no room for negotiation. At that level of royal legal power, nobody was about to let someone not yet formally established as Queen Consort access sealed inheritance instructions tied to the monarchy's future. The fact Camilla even tried shows how tense things already were behind the scenes. She sensed something big was being built to shut her family out, but she simply couldn't get close enough to stop it. Then the written summary arrived at Clarence House that Tuesday morning, confirming the inheritance was signed, sealed, and fully transferred. But what it didn't reveal was that William's real strategy had only just begun. Taking control of the duchy wasn't the endgame. It was just the first clean strike in a much larger plan. The next move was sharper, more personal, and aimed straight at individuals in Camilla's inner circle who had been quietly benefiting from access they were never meant to have in the first place. How William dismantled Camilla's world, one family member at a time. The first person in Camilla's circle to feel the ground shake beneath them was her son, Tom Parker, B.S. Tom had spent nearly 2 decades building a public identity as one of Britain's most recognizable food writers and culinary personalities. His cookbooks, restaurant columns, and TV appearances carried a commercially powerful but unspoken advantage. He was the Queen Consort's son. Tom never had to say it out loud. Everyone already knew what his last name meant and which doors it quietly opened without him even knocking. But in 2023, things surfaced that showed just how far the Parker BS family had reached into Duchy of Cornwall assets before William took control. A private investment group tied to a hospitality company linked the Shandon family submitted a formal development request to the Duchy's management board. They were asking for a long-term lease on a commercial property in Kennington, South London. The pitch was a luxury members club built around British aristocratic culinary heritage. On the surface, it looked normal, but underneath it was far more calculated than it appeared. The group had built a maze of company names and holding entities, shell companies designed to hide who really controlled everything, specifically designed to hide the Shand family connection from anyone reviewing the application. William's estate managers saw straight through it, and the request was rejected instantly. They placed a full paper trail on William's desk, showing exactly how the cover-up structure was built. You can only imagine what his reaction was when he read it. What the paper trail revealed turned a bad situation into something far more devastating, because this wasn't the first time. A review of previous inquiries going back several years showed a pattern of approaches from business entities linked through layers that, after serious digging, all led back to the same family network. None of them had ever been approved. But the persistence behind those attempts tells a louder story than people want to admit. It shows Tom's side of the family had been treating the Duchy's commercial property portfolio like a long-running opportunity, quietly probing for openings and waiting for the moment access might slip through. That moment never came, and after April 2026, it never would. As if that wasn't already serious enough, William's team launched a full legal and financial audit of the Duchy's historical arrangements during the formal transfer of power, opening the Outrage records, one of the Duchy's most historically significant agricultural estates. and uncovered something buried in paperwork since the 1980s. A lease agreement signed by a minor royal household official decades earlier had granted a farming cooperative tied to the Parker B.S. agricultural network in Wiltshire preferential grazing rights, allowing them to use land at a fraction of its real market value for a yearly fee far below what it should have been worth. It was technically legal when signed, but its discovery confirmed what William's team had suspected for years, that the Parker B.S. family's ties to royal assets didn't begin recently or by chance. It had roots going back decades, buried deep in paperwork nobody had bothered to fully examine until now. That lease was canceled almost immediately after the April 26th signing ceremony, and by all accounts from insiders at the palace, it was one of the discoveries that turned the already frozen relationship between Kensington Palace and Clarence House into something resembling open warfare, fought entirely through silence. But as serious as all of that was, nothing that happened to Tom came close to the blow that fell on Camilla's younger sister, Annabel Elliot. Annabel had been sitting in one of the most comfortable and least publicly scrutinized positions connected to the royal household for years. King Charles had personally appointed her as his interior design consultant, and that role came with serious influence inside the royal system. It wasn't just about decoration. It gave Annabel direct professional access to some of the most high-profile royal residences in the country and a direct line into royal spending. Annabel received substantial payments through the royal household budget to manage redecoration and refurbishment projects at properties including Highgrove, Charles's private estate in Gloucestershire, and Birkhall, the Scottish retreat tied closely to his personal life. Royal finance analysts had quietly raised questions over the years about whether those contracts were always put through open competitive tender, the standard process meant to ensure multiple bids and transparency, or whether some arrangements simply resulted in a steady flow of royal funds directed toward the Queen Consort's sister through structures overseen and approved within Charles's authority. Those questions never gained traction at the time, largely because the power structure around Charles and Camilla made formal challenges difficult to push forward. To understand Annabel's position, you have to look beyond simple design work. It operated at a much higher level than most people realize. Interior design consultants in that tier don't just pick colors or furniture. They handle large budgets, coordinate teams of contractors, and influence how royal homes are presented to visiting heads of state and diplomatic guests. That level of responsibility comes with enormous financial scope and access that stretches far beyond the physical spaces being worked on. Annabel had been inside private wings of royal residences that even senior courtiers rarely entered, and she did so repeatedly over many years with full institutional approval. That kind of access carries weight, not just financially, but in the quiet influence it creates across connected networks inside the household. For years, her role placed her in a position where decisions, contracts, and oversight all intersected at a very sensitive level, drawing attention from those who track royal expenditure. And the deeper analysts looked, the clearer it became that Annabel's position wasn't just about design. It sat right at the intersection of influence, trust, and long-standing institutional arrangements. When William began his review of royal household spending under his new authority, Annabel's contracts were flagged almost immediately, and his reaction was sharp, controlled, and absolutely final. He canceled them. No review period, no soft landing, no stage exit meant to protect her reputation. The contracts were simply gone. Her access to royal residences was cut off on the spot, and that was the end of her professional role inside that system. But the real weight of this decision wasn't just about money or contracts. It was tied to Annabel's home and what had taken place inside it for years. Annabel's house had been the hidden meeting place where Charles and Camilla carried out their secret relationship during the long years of the affair. While Diana was breaking down under public and private pressure, it was inside those walls that everything stayed protected, hidden, and carefully out of sight. William has known this for most of his adult life, and he has carried that knowledge like something that never gets easier to hold. So when he signed the order ending Annabelle's contracts, it wasn't just an administrative move. It was him closing a chapter of history that had already taken too much from him, done quietly but permanently with a single signature. The termination itself was delivered through routine official channels, written like standard paperwork, but landing like a shockwave on impact. To outsiders, it looked ordinary, but inside the palace, it hit differently. And it landed in Camilla's world with a force no one around her was prepared for. What followed was an unsettling phone call. Behind closed doors in Clarence's house, the Queen Consort of England reportedly came completely undone. The phone call, the raised voices, the collapse of control, it all unfolded in private, but the consequences were immediate. And in that moment, the message inside the palace was clear. The shift had already happened, and Camilla was no longer in a position to stop it. The news of Annabelle's dismissal hit Camilla's world like a wrecking ball, and the pressure that followed in the days after came in heavy. Nothing she had dealt with in 30 years inside the royal household. Her phone started ringing, and it did not stop. Tom called first. Tom made the first call. "Mom, you have to do something." He told her, his voice tight, with the kind of desperation that comes from watching something you spent years building start to collapse. "This cannot stand. You have to speak to Charles, and you have to do it now." Tom made it clear that what William was doing was not just about Annabelle. It was about all of them, about the entire network of relationships and quiet arrangements that the family had built around Camilla's position over the years. And if she did not push back hard and fast, there would be nothing left to protect. Laura Lopez called as well, quieter than her brother, but carrying the same suffocating urgency, adding her weight to a pressure that was already becoming unbearable. Camilla held herself together through both calls, because holding herself together is the one thing she has always been able to do, no matter what is falling apart around her. And then Annabelle called, and everything fell apart. Camilla took the call in her private room at Clarence's house and pulled the door shut behind her. She was inside that room for 1 full hour. The staff waiting in the corridor outside could not make out the words, because Camilla has spent 30 years learning how to conduct a difficult conversation without letting the world hear it. But then, somewhere in the middle of that hour, her voice broke through the door with a force that stopped every single person in that corridor completely cold. It was not a raised voice, it was a scream. "You cannot do that!" And then the room went silent again. A silence so thick and heavy that the staff outside later said it felt worse than the scream itself. When Camilla came out of that room, she was not the same woman they were used to seeing at all. Her face was pale and tight, her eyes wide and glassy, like she had just seen something she could never unsee. The calm, controlled version of her that had held everything together for 3 decades was simply gone. She looked frightened in a way that ran deep into the bone. Not anger, not shock, but raw fear that sits under the skin and doesn't move. Something said in that room had broken straight through every layer she had built over the years. People who saw her said it was like watching someone realize the ground under them had been hollow the whole time. What exactly passed between the two sisters during that hour has never been officially confirmed. But those who understand the family history and the pressure building for years have formed a clear picture of what Annabelle's message likely was. Annabelle had spent years as the quiet, invisible protector of the Charles and Camilla relationship. She opened her home, carried the social risk, and helped keep everything hidden during the years when exposure would have destroyed everything. And her reward for all that loyalty eventually came in the form of a stable, high-value professional role tied to the royal household. Then William stepped in and stripped it all away with one administrative decision. No warning, no soft exit, nothing. And Annabelle was not the kind of person to take that quietly. The message she delivered to her sister during that call appears to have been devastatingly simple. "Help me get my position back," she told Camilla, "or I will expose you." Expose what precisely? Nobody standing in that corridor could say Camilla's scream. And the hollow-eyed woman who walked out of that room made one thing horrifyingly clear. Whatever Annabelle was holding, it wasn't just anger or revenge. It was something that could tear Camilla's entire world apart into pieces too small to ever rebuild. Now, think about what Annabelle actually has access to. She was not just a sister showing up at family dinners hearing half-stories. She was the one who opened her front door during the affair and let Charles and Camilla walk in again and again over the years. She was there during private talks, saw interactions up close, and absorbed everything at a time when they believed they were fully untouchable and safe from exposure. Whatever was said in her home during those years, whatever she saw, whatever she heard, she has carried it ever since. And for as long as the financial arrangement with the royal household stayed in place, she had no reason to ever use it. The moment William canceled those contracts, everything shifted fast and cold. After the call, Camilla did what she always did when pressure closed in on her world. She went to Charles. But this time, she didn't walk in calm or controlled. She came in shaking, exposed, and stripped of the polished image she had built for 30 years. Charles could see it the second she walked through the door. Camilla sat across from him and laid everything out with no filter at all. She told him about Annabelle's contracts, about Tom's situation, and about the pressure her family was pouring on her from every direction. And she told him about the phone call and exactly how it hit her. Then she looked at her husband and asked him to fix it. "Charles, you have to speak to William," she said, her voice breaking at the edges in a way she could not control. "You have to make him understand what he is doing to this family. You have to stop this." Charles sat with everything she had said for a long moment, and then he told her no. Charles said it quietly, almost gently, and that softness made it hit even harder. He told her that the Transfer of Sovereignty Act was irreversible, that the instructions inside the red envelope carried his mother's sovereign authority, and that nothing any living person could do would undo what Elizabeth had legally locked in place. "My hands are tied, Camilla," he said. "There is nothing I can do." Camilla stared at him for a moment, and then something shifted in her expression. It wasn't loud, but it was enough to change the entire air in the room, something that moved past desperation and straight into a cold, sharp clarity. She had spent decades in rooms with this man, and she knew exactly when he was hiding behind carefully selected words. "Your hands are tied," she said, her voice dropping into something very quiet and razor-sharp. "You signed that document without a single word to me. You sent an aide with a note. Don't tell me your hands were tied, Charles. You folded them." Charles had no answer, and the silence that followed filled every corner of the room like pressure building before a break. What made Charles's refusal even harder to swallow was the context sitting behind it. This wasn't just a single decision. It was the first time Charles had fully overridden Camilla's interests to protect his relationship with William. During the coronation planning in 2023, a major internal clash had already exposed the fault lines when Camilla's team pushed for Tom and Laura to receive formal ceremonial roles in the event. William's response through intermediaries was blunt and unmoving. The coronation was a bloodline event, and Camilla's children had no constitutional standing that justified any official role in it. Charles had stepped in back then and sided with Camilla's position, giving her camp the win, but that move left residue behind it. The bitterness inside William's circle never fully cooled, and it only strengthened his determination to make sure the next major dynastic decision would be entirely under his control, and now it was. Charles sat across from his wife, telling her there was nothing he could do about it anymore. After Charles, Camilla turned to the only path left available to her. She began working through intermediaries and formal household channels, trying to secure a private meeting directly with William. William rejected every single request with the same calm, final refusal, like a man who had already made his decision and saw no reason to reopen it for anyone he knew could not shift it in any direction. And the more Camilla pushed for that meeting, the more frustration built inside her family, who saw her failure to reach him as something growing more and more dangerous by the day. Inside the Parker, BS, and Shan circle, the anger toward Camilla is hitting a level people close to it are calling seriously unsettling. It's not just directed at William anymore. They're coming at her because she was the bridge that gave them access, and now that bridge has snapped clean in half. That connection is gone, and they want answers she can't easily give. The months ahead are looking rough, and for Camilla it's shaping up to be the most punishing stretch she has ever faced inside the House of Windsor. It feels heavier than the public backlash after Diana's death, and more isolating than the long years she spent waiting for formal recognition from Charles. Back then, at least she had something to aim for, something to push toward. Now she's stuck in the middle of everything, boxed in by a family on one side applying pressure, and a wall of constitutional law on the other that William built to keep them locked out. Add in a husband who won't move, and a man she can't even get on the phone, and the situation turns into something completely suffocating. This is the kind of detail that should make anyone paying attention stop and think twice. Nobody outside that room knows exactly what Annabelle said in that hour-long call. Nobody knows what Tom knows, or Laura, or the others who have been close enough over the years to see things never meant to be seen. What is clear is that Camilla's family feels deeply betrayed. They believe they gave loyalty, time, and protection, and now they're being shut out with nothing left in return. At least one of them has already made it clear to Camilla that silence isn't something that lasts forever. If sensitive information about Camilla ever starts slipping into the press in the coming months, or if buried stories suddenly surface through untraceable routes, the palace will immediately know where to start looking. William has already locked down his position. His structure is in place. The legal framework is signed, and he's not shifting even slightly. But the real danger in this situation isn't sitting in formal power. It's with the people just outside it, cornered, angry, and sitting on information that was never supposed to survive this long, and now holding everything left with nowhere simple for it to go. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below.